Hey everybody, it's Chris, MTGO's RexDart, and thank you for joining me for some more of our Christmas celebration here on Eternal Warrior. And we are looking at Naya colored decks today, and you've just seen the modern coverage, and we're going to have a legacy portion coming up here. And this is traditional Naya Zoo, and this is a deck that I consider sort of a specialty of mine. I've been playing it for pretty much the whole time that I've been back in Magic since I returned after my long hiatus. It was much more popular back when I first began playing again, back in about 2010. And one of the reasons was that it has a very good game against a lot of the tribal Aether Vial decks that were popular back then. And things like all the spot removal for their lords, for instance, usually against either merfolk or goblins, you were just scratching an X in the win column as soon as you sat down against them. And the thing is, in paper Magic, a lot of people still play those decks. I mean, even if you go to like a 5K event, you're going to find a lot of people still playing the decks that they played 2 or 3 years ago. Merfolk in particular is still kind of considered a good deck for people who aren't really familiar with the format. And so you will see some of those decks when you sit down across from them. You'll also see things like Affinity, where, again, having all this spot removal sometimes is just great. Blue-Red Delver is kind of one of the more budget blue decks. You'll see a lot of that, and again, this is a deck that mauls Blue-Red Delver. The trouble, of course, is you get to your combo decks, you hit a combo deck, it has a very bad combo matchup, you're in a situation where you have to race, so I still use a build that's very low curve. Some people play a mid-rangey build with Green Sun Zenith and things like that, and if you're going to play that, I think you should probably just play Maverick. Because the idea here, and you're going to see this in some of the videos I recorded, just being able to throw some burn at their face and create some additional pressure against the life total of a combo player has some real applications. And so I think that if you're playing red, that's what you're playing it for. So you can speed up your clock and just try to be faster because you have at least some chance of trying to race combo depending on what their draw is, especially games 2 and 3 with your hate cards. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, if you feel like you need to have the onboard disruption and stuff, you want your main deck Thalias and things, just play Maverick. But understand if you're doing that you're not going to have that ability to put that kind of pressure on their life total early on. So the current configuration that I'm running online, which would be different than what I would run in paper. Online, I've got 4 Nacatls, 4 Curdapes, 3 Lavamancers, full set of Tarmogoyfs, and I'm running a full set of Kasali Pridemage. You do see a lot of artifact decks lately, and of course Umezawa's Jite ever since the Legend rule and everything changed. I can't just rely on having the 1 in the sideboard to occasionally randomly just kill theirs. So having a bunch of Pridemages is useful. I'm at the full set now. I've got 3 Knight of the Reliquary. Sometimes this is too slow. Sometimes you may not get to your 3rd land. And of course I'm not running Wastelands in this configuration. So the utility here, he's basically just a big beater. And it's also something I can use to fetch up Horizon Canopy, for instance, when I need to draw an extra card. I should have, and I forgot when I was tweaking with this sideboard, to throw a Bojuka Bog back in there. I usually do that, but I didn't have one for the videos that I recorded. You can see the sideboard here lacks it, but I would normally say try to find room for a Bojuka Bog in your sideboard. But the reality, of course, is that a lot of the graveyard decks are going to get to the point where they can use their graveyard before you're going to have an active Knight of the Reliquary on like turn 4. If I was a Noble Hierarch deck or Deathrite Shaman deck or something where I could play him turn 3 and then maybe activate it, play it turn 2 and then activate it turn 3, that would make some sense. But I still would recommend playing the Bojuka Bog, but understand that it may be too slow sometimes. So keep that in mind. Sylvan Library, I would like to think of a way to get to a second one, possibly. The second one, of course, is redundant, but if you have the first one, the idea is you can see what you got coming up. You have a lot of fetch lands. There are 11 in this version, so you can shuffle away if the second one comes up. It's redundant. But it's so good in the attrition matchups they will move heaven and earth if they know what they're doing to counter this, destroy it, whatever, above everything else, because this is the card that, in against Bug or some one of these attrition matchups, is just going to get you back in, because you're going to be digging for the burn you need to close them out. You're going to be digging for additional creatures, especially against a control deck that's not putting any pressure on your life total. This thing is just amazing. And even once you can't really draw any extra cards off of it, you can still use it in conjunction with your fetch lands and start shuffling away dead cards. So Sylvan Library is great. I used to run 2. I went down to 1, but I'm thinking of going back up to 2, given how many of those kind of bug attrition decks you're still seeing around. The burn suite is pretty standard. I run all 4 Chain Lightnings, all 4 Lightning Bolts, obviously. 4 Path to Exile. I have seen zoo decks that run Sword to Plowshares. I'm not really sure why, unless you're going to run Wastelands. If you're going to attack their mana, that makes perfect sense. If not, I say go ahead and just run Path to Exile. You don't need them gaining life. That's just, hurting what the rest of your deck is doing. These I kind of view as the burn finishers. This is not going to usually be going to a creature. These can all be used as creature control, but you don't really want to have to Fire Blast a guy, except in weird corner cases. So Fire Blast and Price of Progress I sort of view as my finishing burn. And I do have a lot of duels, so Price of Progress can hurt me, sometimes almost as much as it hurts my opponent. But usually I'm the more aggressive deck, and so that's not going to be a problem. There are, of course, dead matchups, and in a local metagame where maybe you have a bunch of people with budget decks, you may or may not want to keep those in, depending on what kind of budget decks they're playing. Online, I find there are enough people with 3-color decks. And again, when we were talking about the switch from decks like Merfolk and Goblins being really popular to now your sort of aggro tempo decks are usually almost like always 3 colors. And they just try to use the best of every different color that they want. And then the metagame sort of responded to that by everybody's playing Wastelands, even decks that never used to play Wastelands. It's really kind of interesting, but anyways, the long and short of it is there are enough of those 3-color decks out there. The Price of Progress is just going to maim so many of them that I will run a couple main deck. And it's one of those things, against certain matchups you can board it out. You face the mono-red aggro guy in the 2-mans, and that happens. Poof, take out your Price of Progress, throw in your Kitchen Finks. That's one of the things. Always plan for, what you're going to do against sort of the popular budget decks if you're playing online. So I've got mana base is pretty standard. I used to run 3 plateaus. Right now I'm doing only 2. So I'm on 2, 2, and 2 of each of the duels. Savannah is your worst one. You need to prioritize fetching mountains for Fire Blast. You also want to maximize the fetches that fetch red, because you need to be able to get Basic Mountain in a lot of matchups where other people have Wastelands. Basic Mountain is like your top thing. Certainly in the old days against Merfolk, which you may still see online, but some of your Delver decks and stuff, you want to be able to cast a Grim Lavamancer off of a Basic Mountain. I've won an entire match against Merfolk with just a Basic Mountain when they wasted everything else, and I just had an active Lavamancer for several turns and drew burn. So don't be afraid to go ahead and fetch your basics. Your mountain and your forest are your key ones there. That's the reason I've included those 2, because those are your 1-drops. Okay, no basic planes here, because you're never going to want to fetch it turn 1. You don't have a 1-drop for that. The sideboard, Mindbreak Trap, absolutely essential, because there are a lot of combo decks online. Charbelcher is pretty cheap to build, so you see that. Storm still has its adherents, so definitely run Mindbreak Trap. That's the best answer to those decks. Umezawa's Jite for the creature mirrors. I'm running a couple red elemental blasts. I don't usually run them in Zoo, but I wanted to have some way to interact with True Name Nemesis, and I haven't really had the chance to come up with a good plan. I've done some quick gatherer searches. Unless I want to play like Magistrate's Veto, I don't really think that the Zoo colors have a great answer right now to True Name Nemesis. I'm contemplating whether I should add Elspeth or something to try to go over the top of them, but I was hoping not to see a bunch of them, because it's only been online for a couple days, but as you'll see in the videos, I get one right away, so you'll see how I deal with it there. But I think that I'm going to have to evolve this to deal with the reality of True Name Nemesis being in the format. And again, I've fought through a lot of junk over the years with Zoo. I'm not just going to abandon the deck because True Name Nemesis makes all the non-blue fair decks look bad. I mean, I think there are answers. I'm just going to have to try to figure out how I want to deal with it. Couple Kitchen Finks, as I said, for the aggro mirrors. I mix up my Graveyard Hate because of Cabal Therapy. So right now I'm running 1 Cage, 1 Crypt, 2 Rest in Peace, and a Wheel of Sun and Moon. Rest in Peace may seem weird because I have Tarmogoyf, Knight of the Reliquary, and Grim Lavamancer, but against the decks where I want Rest in Peace, 1 or more of these are coming out. Like against Reanimator, Lavamancer is going to come out. Against Dredge, I usually take out just the big ground beaters because they're not going to do anything. So the Rest in Peace aren't really that hurtful to my strategy post board in those matchups as you would think. And then I have a couple Thalias here, just I've never run this in Zoo before, but I figure it might be a nice additional hedge against some of the Storm and Charbelcher decks. So anyways, there's the deck, and I hope you stick around and watch the match replays, and I will see you there in a second.